Hi, everyone. It's Eric Nelson.
All right, Eric, can you hear us okay, Eric?
I can hear you guys great.
Excellent. Check on the manager and then we'll get started in just a second. Two on my phone. Two. I know. He'll be in just 1 second, but if you want to get started, if that's okay? Sure. I think we do have a corner here. Can we get a motion to end the meeting? Start the meeting? Yeah. So, you want to call the roll? Motion to start. First, I have to do a roll call. I'm just going to call your name, just say here. So I'm George Harris here. This is Connor Baldwin. I'm not on the committee. So just, that's all right. Just the members. Chan? Here. Dario Para? Here. Eric Nelson?
Here.
Thomas Golden? Yeah. And Dana Rourke?
Here.
Thank you. The first order of business, and I'll try to get these microphones.
Yeah. So welcome everybody to the first meeting of the Lowell Affordable Housing Trust Fund. My name's Connor Baldwin. I'm the Assistant City Manager for Fiscal Affairs. It was a very exciting new board for the city, and this is our inaugural meeting. So our first order of business on the agenda is the election of officers, and I'm here just to facilitate the conversation, but we'd be willing to entertain a motion or a suggestion of a chair, a vice chair, and a secretary. I don't know if anybody has any thoughts on that.
Well, I think we should have our volunteers take the positions of chair and vice chair, if it's up to me. So if Valerie and Eric want to figure out what they'd like to do, if you're interested in doing it, I'd be honored to make those nominations.
Mr. Nelson?
Yeah, I'll do whatever the group wants me to do. Glad to do either.
Well, I think if it's all right with the members, if Mr. Nelson and Ms. Opara would like to volunteer as chair and vice chair respectively, then
I don't mind doing vice chair.
I know Eric Nelson for the chair and Valerie Powell to be vice chair.
so we have a motion by the mayor, seconded by Mr. Cha.
All in favor, say aye.
All in favor, say aye. And then
2 years.
we will also need a secretary. So if it needs to be a member.
So are there 5 members?
Yeah.
Um,
And the secretary would just take the minutes in the event of Mr. Caloris is not available, or and he will do most of the administrative work, but it would need to be a member of the committee.
Need to be a member of,
Yeah, to be the secretary.
only if George isn't here.
Right, only if Mr. Caloris is not able to join the meeting, which is unlikely.
tough for me to do because
But I
English is not my thing.
all right, Mr. Mayor, So could I have a motion
Motion.
by Mr. Cha, seconded by Ms. Opara? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. So the next item on the agenda, and I'll, for the sake of this meeting, help bring us through the agenda. We have a presentation by the city manager's office, and mostly just a discussion of, how we've come to this point. So the city council in 2024 voted to adopt the statute to create the trust, as well as to seed the trust with $3.3 million from the ARPA funds. The business that's before the committee today, this afternoon, is to take receipt of those funds, which is an important step logistically as well as legally to seed the trust fund, and then to take a vote. The next vote that we'll have the committee take is to declare, to vote to give the city manager the authorization to file the declaration of trust, which is a legal document. It will establish the trust. This is something we will record with the Registry of Deeds. The law department will prepare the documentation. It's a pretty standard pro forma process, but we need the vote of the board in order to do that. So there are 2 votes before the committee to do that. The work of the committee will take place subsequent to this meeting. It's probably a good idea for the committee to have some presentation. Either we could solicit some members from other communities or from Mass Housing to come and give a presentation on some of the responsibilities, some of the programs that the board can administer. And so those are all things that the work that the board will do in the future, as well as coming up with sort of a strategic plan for the expenditure of the funds. It's worth noting for the members and for the folks watching at home that the ARPA funds that are the seed money, those are one-time revenues that, we have this opportunity to do some really good work with. But we have to, number one, abide by the restrictions. And, I know the mayor and the city manager are familiar with these restrictions, but for the purpose of the other members, those have been encumbered. So there are 2 deadlines with the ARPA funds. One is the encumbrance deadline that has passed. That was 12/31/2024. So the transfer into the trust fund satisfied that obligation. The next major deadline is the expenditure deadline, which is 12/31/2026. So there is a time frame around that initial seed money, but I think something the board may want to consider is about other types of revenue sources that would help fund future projects, future programs from the trust, building additional housing stock in the city. Running other possible food for thought would be rental assistance programs, other types of programs that other communities may be running. There's a lot of opportunities that I won't spend a lot of time talking about now, but this is all the work that the committee will do in the future. So without too much further ado, could I entertain a motion from one of the members to take the first vote, or is there any questions?
I'd like to make a motion to accept the city ARPA fund obligated to the trust in the amount of $3,300,000.
Is there a second on that motion? Second.
Is that the right amount? Is it 300,000 or 3 million?
3.3 million, 3,300,000.
Okay, yep, great.
Yep. So the motion has been, motion made by Mr. Cha, second
Sorry.
by Ms. Opara. All in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes. And the second order of business under the votes would be to establish, if I could just borrow your, George, I want to read the language into the record. So a vote to establish the Lowell Affordable Housing Trust Fund and authorize the city manager or his designee to record the declaration of trust with the Registry of Deeds and any incidental documents related thereto. This is, for purposes of background, there may be associated documentation that may be needed to do that. So it would authorize the city manager to do that on the trust fund, the Board of Trustees' behalf. Could I get a motion from by the mayor, second by Mr. Cha. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So voted. Not to do all the talking here, but the next order of business would be to talk about a schedule of meetings. So that is entirely up to the body. I know everyone's very busy, but there should be some regular schedule. It could be once a month, it could be bi-monthly. What is the wish of the body in terms of meetings?
So
Please.
the meetings do occur. We're gonna have people come to us requesting funds? Is it similar to the CPA?
It's very similar to the the Community Preservation Committee, and I think the first step would be to come up with a process for how that would work. In most communities with an affordable housing trust, there is a process for submitting projects. We could maybe at the next meeting come with some suggestions for what that process would look like. Mr. Caloris could talk to his colleagues in DPD who administer the Community Preservation Committee to come up with some forms and some timetables for application for the committee to consider in terms of how projects would be submitted and what kind of a process would be used for approving the projects. So that will all come in future meetings, and I hope that addresses your question.
Yeah, so I guess what's the difference between someone coming before us and someone going before the CPC?
The amount of money, I guess, would be my answer, and my hope, on behalf of the city manager and the administration, is that the community this is what other communities do that have a more fully formed affordable housing trust fund. I have to look into the logistics of this, but the Community Preservation Committee, there are the different buckets: open space, affordable housing, historic preservation, that the Community Preservation Act surcharge can fund. Many communities that have both of these things, the Community Preservation Committee will automatically designate their 10% of affordable housing to go directly to the trust fund, meaning that every year the Community Preservation Committee has 10% of the approximately $1 million, so we'll say $100,000. And that they will need to vote in the affirmative every year to do this, but it becomes practice that money comes over to the trust, and then the Board of Trustees then administers it. So I hope this makes sense, but the CPC essentially designates the trust to deal with those amounts designated for affordable housing. I think that would be a great way to begin a sustainable funding source for this board, but something we should, talk with the Community Preservation Committee about. They're already, aware to some extent that this board has started and that this is what many other communities do. But that, I think, would be one way to, number one, to your question, Mr. Mayor, ensure that there's no redundancy so that it's only this board hearing matters of affordable housing, that it's sort of,
Any longer at the CPC?
right. So, and this is, there's a long way of getting there, but this is the way to establish that, would be for them to automatically designate or to vote every year to just send that money to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, which makes it easier for them so they don't have to administer these applications for affordable housing. Those would come to this board. But that is something, if the board is in favor of this, something we can work with the Community Preservation Committee to establish.
My question is, for the sake of not reinventing the wheel, is there anything in place that, as far as criteria, the whole process, is there a process sheet or anything that's
Yes.
available for us, for the board to review, so that we understand the full criteria, and this is after funding, it's federal funding, is still
Yes.
restricted on, based on the federal guideline?
Yes, it is, and yes, and those are important considerations. But to your first question, yes, the DPD has already started to pull some things together that I think maybe at our next meeting we could have some of the staff from DPD, aside from Mr. Caloris, come to talk about, and maybe we could have the assistant city manager, DPD director, or her designee. She's already been working on forms and some of the process that DPD would recommend, and then this with the idea of the board sort of adopting the recommendation or making tweaks. I mean, we envision, the administration and the city employees doing a lot of the legwork, and then the board will make, do the deciding as to which projects are funded, and then we'll sort of advise and consent on the process. So we'll tell us whether it's acceptable to the board. If there are changes, we'll take them back and make the changes. But if the thought is not to have the board come up with the process necessarily, we'll do that work internally. We have plenty of very talented, smart individuals in the DPD who will come up with that and then bring them to the board to consider. And if it's amenable to the members of the board, you'll approve and put that into place. If it's not, we can make changes, bring it back, and you can approve it at that time.
I have a question.
Please.
There'll be various organizations requesting funding. It could be individual, it could be for developers, it could be corporations. Is
Right.
there a limit on how much each category funds they can receive?
Do you mean that? Well, that is certainly I think something that the board could establish a limit for, like a cap on individual applications. Whether, I'm making this up, but if there were a $100,000 limit on requests for funding, and that may be, I mean, there will be a natural limit by the amount of money that's in the fund. But the board could set limits so as to try to fund more projects of a lower limit. So if you have $3.3 million, maybe you don't want to, spend the $3.3 million on a single project, which the board could decide to do that. That's within the jurisdiction of the board. There could be a cap of $50,000, $100,000 so that more projects are funded, but those are all things that the board can consider and vote on.
Okay, and you mentioned we have till 2026 to use
To spend the funds, right.
So what about the fall, after 2026, will we get more funding?
It's an excellent question. And there will not be more ARPA funding. So this idea we're talking about a little bit in the beginning from the community preservation surcharge could be a funding source, but I think the board, in concert with the administration, needs to start talking about other funding sources. So, excuse me, one such funding source that other communities use is a linkage ordinance. That may or may not be something that's suitable for Lowell, but I know that Somerville, and I'll explain, for the members and for folks who may be watching this at home, what that is, how that operates. But it would take the city council to establish any kind of a new fee that might be a funding source. That's in the jurisdiction of the city council. But in communities like Somerville, Cambridge, those are the two that I know for sure have such a thing. But in others, this linkage ordinance establishes for certain types of development projects a $1 per square foot of funding, that if a developer is going to build a housing project in the city of Lowell, depending on the type of project, there would be a requirement by city ordinance, or there is in Somerville and Cambridge, of a certain, like I said, $1 per square foot. DPD or whomever interfaces with the project developer would calculate the amount. That amount of money would go into the trust. There are other potential funding sources. So the trust can also hold real assets, meaning, property. And one of the things that the city council has discussed over the past couple of years has to do with our properties and tax title, and other abandoned properties, et cetera. So the city council can transfer ownership to the trust of tax title properties or distressed, foreclosed properties that the city may hold the title. And then the trust fund can dispose of them and, essentially liquidate them, and the funds would belong to the trust at that point, or can hold them, can hold ownership of them to develop them into affordable housing. These are things that other communities do, and I'm not an expert in, all of the finer details, but I'm happy to provide resources to the trust. I think that's a little further down the line.
Do you know the percentage of money that's allotted to affordable housing from CPC funds?
10%. Yeah.
Whatever's collected,
Yep.
10% comes to us every year.
Yes, that is the idea. I think it would require still a vote by the Community Preservation Committee. I don't know if they can, I think this is something to research on our part, but they may be able to take a vote to automatically designate it in the future. But the Community Preservation Act, 10% would be about $110,000 a year. There are other, sort of, Mr. Coloris has shared a budget, potential budget. The vacant storefront fee could be something. Any, municipal fee could become, if the council were to approve and the Affordable Housing Trust were in agreement, could become a receipt of the trust or could become a future funding source. The linkage ordinance just being one example. But that is something that needs more discussion and would need approval by the city council. I hope that answers your question. And Mr. Coloris, we've been joined by the city manager, if you could just note that for the record.
Honestly, every 2 months, go ahead. Oh. Is every 2 months realistic, or in the beginning, should we do every month?
I mean, Mr. Chair.
Just to chime in that point, I mean, maybe while we meet with these other communities and try to get kind of our processes in order, we may meet monthly and then move it to every 2 months. I feel like we have a lot of work to do to kind of get up and running. And
Yeah.
and a 12/31/26 deadline.
So with consideration that all of you are very busy individuals, I know that, certainly the administration is here to support you however frequently you want to meet. I think monthly, I tend to agree with Mr. Nelson that in the beginning there will be a lot of ramp up, but maybe there will be a time that every other month becomes more suitable. And I think a month's time is probably enough for us to try to find maybe an individual from another community to come and share their expertise and lessons learned from their trust. They could come to the meeting, that you could spend, some time talking with them, learning from them. The big items, if I could digress for just a second, the big items were done today to accept, this satisfies some of our obligations to the auditor, to establish the fund, to seed the fund. So I'm very happy that we had this meeting today because we check a lot of boxes. But there will still be a lot of work to determine and then to expend the funds ahead of that 2026 deadline. So, we're more than happy to meet the needs of the committee, whatever you decide.
Another just a comment or suggestion, Connor. I know everyone's busy. I'm in Denver today, and it seems like folks, commuting to Boston, or the administration has, city council Tuesday night, school committee Wednesday night, a lot of other things. It just seems like a lot of these boards kind of don't meet in the morning. And I would suggest maybe if it's, convenient for my other colleagues, we look at meeting, during, 9 o'clock on Thursdays or Fridays, or there's a day that people don't go into Boston and have, more flexibility. If it's more convenient for folks, that would be great. I know it'd be easier for me, I think, just, block some time in the morning and then head into Boston if I had to, as opposed to trying to scramble to come back and make it in time and stuck in traffic, really any night of the week. So I don't know if boards meet during the day.
I'm not sure if you could hear that, Mr. Nelson, but it doesn't seem to work for all the members of the board.
Okay.
So I think, in my opinion, if we could establish at least one meeting in the future, maybe a month from now, before we leave here today, then maybe we can establish the rest of the calendar, thereafter, and maybe set a cadence, sometime thereafter to start meeting every month on a certain day or time. But I think for the next meeting, if we can set a date, we can commit to have some speakers come in to provide some more information to the board, so that the board can continue to acclimate itself to the work that's ahead. So I would offer that as a suggestion.
May I propose on Wednesday, the third Wednesday at 4:30, exactly the same time? Wednesday of the month.
So that would be July 16th.
That's the only time I would have, so the rest, the other Wednesday, I
If we could maybe poll the members as to whether the 4:30 on Wednesday, July 16th would work. Okay.
That works for me.
Okay. Well, then we will hold that time and send out a reminder in advance, but we'll establish the meeting. Excellent. So, yeah.
Are there any action items, anything we should do? You mentioned about speakers coming, is it something that we should be doing?
So my suggestion, if I may, is there is a guidebook from Mass Housing about affordable housing trust funds that I would recommend all of the members take a look at, and we'll email out copies to everyone. I don't think there is too much more than that needs to happen at this point, because the information will come to you, and then you can digest, and we'll follow up appropriately from the next meeting. Okay. Mr. Manager?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Baldwin and Mr. Cloris, for taking this on. I'm glad that we at least set a date for the next meeting. But we have talked about speakers, and to what Ms. Opara was saying, so the action items, the order of operation, do we want to run through any of that for the July 16th meeting? Do you have an idea of who we want to bring in to have a discussion from another community that maybe would love to do? And I sincerely want to say thank you to everybody involved. This is going to be a rough ride in the next couple of months until we hit our stride. I appreciate this very much because I think it's something that's needed here in the city. But I think once you find that we hit our stride running in the next 2 or 3, 4 meetings, I do believe that it at some point can go to every other month. So thank you to the people that have decided to join this board. And we can also, if anybody has any suggestions offline about who else to bring on the board, we can grow this organization in a different way. But this is timely that this has happened. Thank you very much, Mr. Baldwin, for making it happen. And thank you very much to the committee members. Trust us, we'll get through this. It'll be a little bumpy in the first couple, but we're going to be fine. Thank you.
So I will also mention, just for sort of closing remarks, that I believe the ordinance allows for up to 9 members. So we have enough here to continue the work. There may be a time that individuals are unable to meet, so having more may be a good idea. But if there are suggestions from the board that you want to send to myself or the manager offline, please do. I think the more the merrier from that respect. But if there's not any other questions or comments, I think we'd be willing to entertain a motion.
Motion to adjourn.
To adjourn? City Manager, second by Mr. Cha. All in favor? All opposed? Okay. Mr. Nelson, thank you for joining us on Zoom. Have a wonderful afternoon, and thank you very much,
Thank you all.
everyone.
Thank you.